Commander Elias Decker leaned against the viewport of Arcturus Station, watching the Australian delegation's ship dock with military precision. The sleek vessel gleamed like liquid silver against the backdrop of stars, a testament to technology far beyond Earth's capabilities. Elias straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. As the station's security chief, first contact scenarios were his specialty, but nothing had prepared him for meeting the Australians 6 months ago. The memory of Calix flooded back unbidden. Her iridescent copper skin, the constellation of luminescent markings along her temples, those piercing violet eyes. What had begun as a formal diplomatic exchange had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated. One night, just one, before her delegation returned to the stars. "Commander Decker, they're requesting permission to board," his communications officer announced, breaking his reverie. "Permission granted. Standard welcome protocols," Elias replied, his voice betraying none of the tension coiling in his stomach. This visit was unexpected. Relations with the Australians had been cordial but distant since their initial contact. The Treaty of Proxima had established trade routes and non-aggression pacts, nothing more. There was no reason for them to return so soon. The airlock cycled open, and 3 Australians entered the reception area. 2 royal guards in crystalline armor flanked a smaller figure in flowing robes of midnight blue. Not Calix. Elias felt both relief and disappointment. "Commander Decker," the central figure lowered her hood, revealing delicate features and white markings that identified her as a healer. "I am Merida, royal physician to House Valeric. I come on behalf of warrior Calix." Elias maintained his diplomatic composure. "Welcome to Arcturus Station. How may we assist the Australian Empire?" Merida's expression remained unreadable. "This matter is private, Commander. Perhaps we could speak somewhere less," observed. 20 minutes later, in his private quarters, Elias stared at the small containment pod hovering between them. Through its transparent surface, he could see what appeared to be an infant, but with skin that shifted between human peachy tones and a faint copper shimmer. The child, no more than 2 months old by human standards, had a dusting of dark hair and small, half-formed luminescent markings. "Impossible," he whispered. "Our species aren't compatible." Merida's expression softened. "We believed the same, Commander, yet here exists Tevan, child of 2 worlds. Tevan. It means bridge between stars in our language. Fitting, don't you think?" She touched the pod's surface gently. "But this child is more extraordinary than mere existence suggests. Tevan is what we call a celestial shifter, one whose essence transcends fixed gender. Among our kind, such beings appear once in generations, always in royal lineages, never before in a hybrid child." Elias struggled to process this information. "And Calix, where is she?" "Facing challenges at court. The birth of a celestial shifter with human blood has created complications. There are those who view this child as either a divine omen or an abomination." Merida's eyes met his. "Calix has claimed parentage publicly, an act of great courage. She has sent me to offer you a choice. Acknowledge the child and gain protection of her house, or release all claims, and she will raise Tevan alone." The pod hummed softly as the infant stirred, tiny fists waving. Something shifted in Elias' chest as he watched those small movements. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the pod. Merida hesitated, then nodded, pressing a sequence on the side. The top dematerialized, allowing Elias to reach inside. As his fingertip touched the child's palm, tiny fingers instinctively grasped his. The connection was immediate and overwhelming, a surge of protective instinct unlike anything he'd experienced in years of military service. "I need no time to decide," Elias said softly, watching the infant's skin shimmer where they touched, as though responding to his presence. "This is my child, too. I'll face whatever consequences that brings." Merida's expression remained neutral, but her markings pulsed briefly with light, a sign of approval. "Then prepare yourself, Commander. An Australian celestial shifter with human blood will change both our worlds forever. Calix will arrive within the week. Until then, I will teach you what you need to know about your child." As if understanding, the infant's eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that shifted from human blue to Australian violet and back again. Tevan, the bridge between stars, his child. The medical bay of Arcturus Station had never been so quiet. Elias watched as Merida conducted her examination of Tevan, the infant's skin shifting between copper and peach tones as the Australian healer's instruments hummed and glowed. Remarkable, Merida murmured, studying the holographic displays floating above the child. Tevan's cellular structure is continuously adapting, creating a perfect harmony between human and Australian biology. Elias leaned forward. Is that what causes the shifting? Partly, Merida adjusted the display, revealing a complex network of energy patterns. Unlike humans with fixed biological sex, Australians experience subtle gender fluidity throughout our lives, but celestial shifters transcend even our norms. Tevan exists in a constant state of both and neither, a living embodiment of cosmic balance. The door slid open, interrupting them. Captain Naomi Frost, Elia's commanding officer, entered with a stern expression. Commander Decker, we need to talk. Fleet Command is demanding answers about our unexpected guests. Her eyes fell on Tevan, softening briefly before hardening again, particularly about that child. Captain, I can explain. Can you? Because I've got 3 admirals and an ambassador asking why an elite Australian warrior is claiming a human officer as her child's other parent. Do you understand the diplomatic situation you've created? Before Elias could respond, the station's alert system pulsed. Captain, to the bridge, came the urgent call. Unscheduled Australian vessel approaching at high velocity. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as they arrived. On the main view screen, a sleek combat vessel decelerated sharply, its hull bearing the distinctive markings of Australian Royal Guard. They're hailing us, the communications officer announced. On screen, Captain Frost ordered. The view screen shifted to reveal Calix, her copper skin adorned with ceremonial war paint, violet eyes intense. Elias' heart hammered against his ribs at the sight of her. This is Warrior Regent Calix of House Valeric, she announced, her musical accent giving the words a lyrical quality. I request immediate permission to board. 20 minutes later, Elias stood in the docking bay as Calix strode down the ramp of her vessel, flanked by 4 heavily armed guards. She moved with the fluid grace he remembered, but now carried herself with an air of authority that hadn't been present before. Commander Decker, she said formally, stopping before him. Warrior Calix, he responded, maintaining protocol despite the storm of emotions behind his professional facade. Her eyes searched his face. You acknowledged the child. I did. Something flashed across her features, relief perhaps. Then you have my gratitude and the protection of my house. I must see Tevan immediately. In the medical bay, Calix approached the infant with uncharacteristic hesitation. When Tevan's eyes opened, shifting from blue to violet at the sight of her, Calix made a sound, half laugh, half sob, that Elias had never expected from the fierce warrior. The markings have developed further, she whispered, tracing the faint luminescent patterns on Tevan's temples. Already they show the royal constellation. The elders will not be able to deny the signs. Calix, what's happening? Elias asked. Merida mentioned challenges at court, and you arrive in a combat vessel with a guard detail. What aren't you telling me? Calix straightened, her expression growing grave. When I returned to Astralis, I discovered I was carrying a child, an impossibility according to all our scientific understanding. I kept it secret until birth, but when Tevan emerged and the healers identified a celestial shifter, she paused. Such children are destined to rule. There hasn't been one in 3 generations and never one of mixed heritage. And that's dangerous, Elias concluded. The first houses are divided. Some see Tevan as the fulfillment of ancient prophecy, a bridge between worlds. Others view our child as a threat to blood purity. Her eyes met his, fierce and determined. I have claimed the right of maternal protection, but House Valeric's enemies are moving against us. I had to ensure you acknowledged parentage to activate the full ceremonial protections. Captain Frost, who had been silently observing, stepped forward. So this isn't just a personal matter, it's political. It is both, Calix replied. And more, it is evolutionary. She turned to Elias. Our child represents what could be possible between our species, not just coexistence, but integration. Some fear this possibility more than war itself. Elias looked down at Tevan, who had drifted back to sleep, skin shimmering with gentle pulses of light. A child, just a child, yet already carrying the weight of 2 civilizations' futures. What happens now? He asked quietly. Calix's expression was resolute. Now, Commander Decker, you and I must become something neither of us ever intended, parents and protectors of a new future. Admiral Ceres Morgan, Earth Alliance's top diplomat, paced the conference room with barely contained frustration. Opposite her sat the Australian High Emissary, Jarden, his metallic robes reflecting the room's lighting in dazzling patterns. "Let me be clear," Admiral Morgan stated. "Commander Decker's personal relationship with Warrior Colix was not sanctioned by the Alliance, nor does it represent official policy regarding interspecies relations." Jarden's markings pulsed with what Elias had learned to recognize as amusement. "And yet, here we are, discussing the first viable hybrid child between our species, a celestial shifter, no less. The cosmos has a curious sense of timing, wouldn't you agree?" Elias sat silently beside Colix, acutely aware of her tension. Between them, in a specialized containment cradle, Tevan slept peacefully, oblivious to the political storm they had created. "The Australian conclave demands recognition of Tevan's royal status," Jarden continued. "House Valeric has invoked ancient rights of lineage that cannot be dismissed." Admiral Morgan frowned. "And Earth Alliance is expected to simply accept that one of our officers has produced a child who may someday rule your empire. The security implications alone." "Admiral," Elias interrupted, unable to remain silent any longer. "With respect, we're talking about my child, not a political bargaining chip." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Commander, you've created an unprecedented diplomatic situation. Your child could either cement our alliance with the Australians or trigger an interstellar incident." Colix rose in one fluid motion, her hand instinctively moving to the ceremonial blade at her hip. "Tevan is not a situation to be managed," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "In Australian tradition, a celestial shifter chooses their own path. That is their birthright." The tension in the room was broken by a soft chime from Jarden's communication device. The emissary's expression shifted as he read the message, his markings dimming noticeably. "It appears events are moving faster than anticipated," he said gravely. "The opposition faction has called for a blood council. They seek to challenge Tevan's legitimacy." Colix hissed a phrase in her native tongue that needed no translation. "What does that mean?" Elias asked. "It means," Colix replied, "that if we do not present Tevan to the conclave within 7 cycles, our child will be declared nameless, stripped of all rights and protection under Australian law." "And you as well," Elias guessed. Colix nodded once, her expression grim. "House Valeric would be required to disown me or face dissolution." Admiral Morgan sighed heavily. "Commander Decker, it seems you have a choice to make. Either your child becomes a diplomatic ward of Earth Alliance, or I go to Astralis," Elias finished. It wasn't really a choice at all. Later in his quarters, Elias found Colix standing by the viewport, Tevan cradled against her chest. The infant's skin glowed faintly in the dim light, tiny hands reaching toward the stars beyond the glass. "You don't have to come," Colix said without turning. "I can make the petition alone." Elias moved to stand beside her. "Is that what you want?" "What I want," she hesitated, uncharacteristically vulnerable. "What I want has not mattered since the moment I realized I carried a child that should not have been possible." Carefully, Elias reached out, his hand covering hers where it supported Tevan. The infant's skin shimmed at the contact, luminescent markings brightening. "Look," he said softly. Colix's eyes widened as the patterns on Tevan's skin shifted, forming momentarily into a perfect blend of Australian royal markings and what appeared to be human DNA helixes. "The prophecy," she whispered, "the one who bridges 2 realms shall bear the marks of both." "You never mentioned a prophecy before," Elias said. Colix finally met his gaze, "because I never believed in them until now." Their moment of connection was interrupted by the station's alert system. Captain Frost's voice came through the comm. "Commander Decker to the bridge immediately. We've got multiple Australian vessels dropping out of FTL." The main viewscreen displayed 6 warships in attack formation. Captain Frost turned as Elias and Colix arrived, Tevan secured in a protective sling against Elias' chest. "Your child is popular today," Frost said grimly. "Those vessels bear the insignia of House Trevac. They're demanding we surrender the abomination to their custody." Colix's face hardened. "House Trevac leads the purist faction if they take Tevan." "That's not happening," Elias stated, his arm instinctively tightening around his child. For the first time since they'd met, Colix looked at him with something beyond diplomatic interest or physical attraction. There was respect, and perhaps something deeper. "Then we must leave immediately," she said. "My vessel can outrun theirs if we depart now." Captain Frost hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Go, I'll have the station create a diversion to cover your departure." She fixed Elias with a stern look. "Commander, consider yourself on special diplomatic assignment. Don't make me regret this." As they hurried toward the docking bay, Colix spoke urgently. "Once we reach Astralis, we must secure recognition from the Grand Conclave before House Trevak can mobilize its full forces." "And if we succeed?" Elias asked, already knowing their odds weren't good. Colix's markings pulsed with grim determination. "Then we change the course of two civilizations' histories and give our child a chance to live." The stars streaked by in ribbons of light as Colix's vessel pushed the boundaries of Australian FTL technology. In the ship's small medical chamber, Elias watched Teven floating in a nutrient bath that Merida assured him was essential for hybrid development. The child had grown noticeably in just days, now the size of a 3-month-old human infant, with increasingly defined markings pulsing along their skin. "Growth acceleration is normal for celestial shifters," Merida explained, adjusting the bath settings. "Teven is developing faster than either human or Australian norms, finding their own path between our biologies." Elias nodded, though nothing about this situation felt normal. "Will they stabilize?" "Eventually, the first solar cycle is most volatile." She hesitated before adding, "Commander, there is something you should understand before we reach Astralis. The ceremony Teven will undergo, the recognition, it requires genetic bonding from both parents. For you as a human, the process could be intense." "Dangerous, you mean?" Elias translated. Merida's markings dimmed slightly. "There is no precedent. The energies involved have never been channeled through human physiology." Before Elias could respond, the ship lurched violently, sending them both grasping for handholds. The intercom crackled with Colix's voice. "Pursuit vessels closing. Battle stations." In the command center, Colix stood surrounded by holographic displays, her crew moving with practiced efficiency. Her eyes met Elias briefly as he entered. "House Trevak sent their fastest hunters. We cannot outrun them to Astralis." "Then we fight?" Elias asked, automatically assessing tactical positions from the displays. Something unexpected flickered across Colix's face, approval. "We fight. Your combat experience would be valuable." It was the closest thing to a request for help he'd ever heard from her. Elias moved to the weapons station, quickly familiarizing himself with the Australian targeting systems. They weren't so different from Alliance designs, just more intuitive. The pursuing vessels fired first, energy weapons lancing through space toward them. Colix executed a series of evasive maneuvers that would have crushed humans under the G-forces, but the ship's inertial dampeners made it merely uncomfortable. Elias found his opening and returned fire, targeting the lead vessel's propulsion systems. Direct hit. The enemy ship spun wildly, temporarily blocking its companions. "Well struck," Colix said with genuine admiration. For 3 hours, they engaged in a deadly dance through the void, neither gaining decisive advantage. Elias and Colix fell into an unexpected rhythm, anticipating each other's strategies, covering weaknesses, exploiting strengths. They functioned as if they'd trained together for years. During a momentary lull, Colix approached where Elias stood studying enemy formation patterns. Without warning, she placed her hand on his, her skin warm against his. "I did not expect this," she said quietly. "The attack?" Elias asked, though he suspected she meant something else entirely. "Harmony," she clarified. "Between us, it is rare, even among Australians who train together from birth." Before Elias could process this, alarms blared. A massive Australian dreadnought had appeared from subspace directly ahead, bearing the royal insignia of House Valeric. Relief washed over Colix's features. "My house matriarch, she has come herself." The dreadnought's weapons systems powered up, targeting the pursuing vessels, which immediately broke off their attack and retreated. The command center filled with light as a transmission materialized into the holographic form of an older Australian female, her copper skin etched with complex, luminous markings of authority. "Niece," the figure addressed Colix, You have caused quite the disruption in the conclave. Calix bowed her head respectfully. Matriarch Vendra, I am grateful for your intervention. The matriarch's gaze shifted to Elias, studying him with unnerving intensity. So this is the human father. Interesting, I had expected someone different. Commander Elias Decker, he introduced himself, meeting her gaze directly. I thank you for your assistance. A hint of amusement crossed the matriarch's ancient features. Polite, at least. Bring the child to the Grand Temple immediately. The conclave has convened early. House Trevac's agents have been busy. After the transmission ended, Calix turned to Elias, an unfamiliar vulnerability in her expression. The ceremony will be challenging for both of us. I'm ready, Elias assured her, though he couldn't possibly know if that was true. Later, as they approached Astralis, a breathtaking world of crystalline continents and luminescent oceans, Elias found Calix in her private quarters, preparing ritual garments. She wore only a simple shift, her usual armor absent, making her seem suddenly younger, less formidable. Among my people, she said without preamble, celestial shifters are considered blessed by the cosmos itself, but they walk difficult paths. Tevan will face challenges we cannot imagine. Elias moved closer. We'll face them together. Calix looked up, surprise evident in her expression. You speak as though this is permanent. Your presence at the ceremony fulfills your obligation. My obligation? Elias felt a flash of anger. This isn't about obligation, this is about our child. Our child? Calix repeated softly, as if testing the concept. There is no precedent for what we are attempting, Elias. No Australian human parental bond has ever existed. Then we'll make our own precedent, he said, reaching out to touch her face gently. To his surprise, she didn't pull away. Instead, her markings brightened, spreading luminescence to where his fingers made contact with her skin. The sensation was electric, intimate in a way their previous encounter had not been. The genetic bonding ceremony, she whispered. It will create a permanent connection between us, one that transcends physical space. If it succeeds, we will always be linked through Tevan. Are you certain this is what you want? Elias leaned forward until their foreheads touched, a gesture he had learned was sacred among Australians. I've never been more certain of anything. The Grand Temple of Astralis soared above the capital city, its crystalline spires capturing and amplifying the light of the binary suns. Within its central chamber, the conclave had assembled, representatives of all 12 houses arrayed in a perfect circle around the ancient recognition altar. Elias stood beside Calix, both dressed in ceremonial robes that combined Australian traditional elements with subtle Earth Alliance motifs, a symbolic gesture designed by matriarch Vendra. Between them, Tevan floated in a field of pure energy, their skin shifting through a spectacular array of patterns as they sensed the gathered assembly. The child responds to the conclave presence, murmured an elder from House Centauri. A true celestial shifter despite the human blood. From the opposite side, Lord Trevac stepped forward, his massive frame adorned with military honors. Ancient law requires pure lineage for recognition, he declared. This hybrid cannot be acknowledged without weakening all Astralis. Matriarch Vendra approached the altar, her authority silencing the whispers that had broken out. The laws speak of worthiness, not purity, Lord Trevac. The celestial shifter trait has appeared, a blessing that transcends bloodlines. Then let the traditional trial determine worthiness, Trevac challenged. If the human father can endure the bonding energies, I will withdraw my opposition. A ripple of shock passed through the assembly. Calix's hand instinctively moved to her ceremonial blade. The trial could kill him, his physiology. I accept, Elias interrupted, looking directly at Trevac. Calix turned to him, her expression a complex mixture of anger, fear, and something deeper. Elias, you don't understand. No non-Australian has ever survived the full recognition bonding. It will channel cosmic energies through your genetic structure. What choice do we have? He asked quietly. The ritual began with ancient chants that seemed to vibrate through the molecular structure of the temple itself. Elias and Calix were positioned on opposite sides of the floating Tevan, their hands extended into the energy field. At first, the sensation was merely warm, pleasant even. Then the intensity grew. Pain lanced through Elias' body as the energy field pulsed, becoming visible as strands of light that connected him to Tevan and threw the child to Calix. He gritted his teeth, determined not to show weakness before the conclave. Across from him, Calix's markings blazed with light as she channeled the energies with practiced control. Through the haze of pain, Elias became aware of something unexpected, emotions and sensations that were not his own. Calix's fierce protectiveness, her private fears, her growing admiration for him, all flowed along the energy strands connecting them. And deeper still, Teven's consciousness, still forming but already distinct, a beautiful complexity of human curiosity and Astralian perception. "The bonding is taking hold," Matriarch Vendra announced, surprise evident in her voice. "The human endures." Lord Trevek stepped forward again. "Endurance is not acceptance. The cosmic energies must recognize all three as one lineage." As if responding to the challenge, Teven's tiny form began to pulse with intensifying light. The energy field expanded suddenly, enveloping Elias completely. He felt his consciousness stretching, connecting not just to Calix and Teven, but to something vast and ancient, the collective ancestral memory of the Astralian people. In that moment of connection, understanding flooded through him. The Astralians' fear wasn't just about purity, it was about survival. Their population had been declining for generations, their genetic diversity narrowing. Celestial shifters had once been common, but had become increasingly rare. Without some fundamental change, their civilization faced extinction within a few millennia. When the vision faded, Elias found himself on his knees, Calix supporting him with one arm while cradling Teven with the other. The child's appearance had transformed, their markings now clearly visible in a pattern that combined Astralian royal symbols with distinctly human elements. "It is done," Matriarch Vendra declared. "The cosmos has accepted this union." Lord Trevek's expression was unreadable, but he inclined his head slightly. "I withdraw my challenge as promised. The conclave will recognize the child." Later, in the private chambers assigned to them in House Valeric's ancestral palace, Elias sat beside Calix as she settled Teven into a crystalline cradle designed to nurture a celestial shifter's unique needs. The connection forged during the ceremony remained, a subtle awareness of each other's presence that required no words. "I understand now," Elias said softly, "what Teven represents for your people." Calix's gaze remained on their child. "Hope, a future we feared lost." She turned to him, her expression more open than he had ever seen it. "The genetic analysis from the ceremony confirms what the elders suspected. Teven's hybrid nature has stabilized the celestial shifter trait, made it stronger, more adaptable." Which means, she continued, "that future unions between our species could save mine from extinction." She hesitated, then added, "But that is a matter for diplomats and scientists. For us, for now, there is only Teven." Elias reached out, taking her hand in his. The connection between them flared briefly, allowing him to sense her conflicted emotions. "Not just Teven," he said. "Us, this bond, I felt what you feel, Calix, and I know you felt what I feel." For the first time since he'd known her, Calix smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her warrior's face. "Yes, there is no hiding in the bond." Her fingers intertwined with his. "It is not the path either of us would have chosen." "But it's ours now," Elias finished. 6 months later, the Great Hall of House Valeric hosted representatives from both Earth Alliance and the Australian Conclave. Admiral Morgan stood beside Matriarch Vendra as they signed the historic Celestial Accord, a treaty that established not just diplomatic relations, but a framework for cultural and genetic exchange between their civilizations. In a quiet anteroom, Elias watched as Calix demonstrated combat techniques to a fascinated Teven, who now appeared to be the equivalent of a human toddler. The child's form shifted subtly as they played, sometimes more masculine, sometimes more feminine, always unique. "They're going to change everything, aren't they?" Elias asked as Calix joined him by the window. "They already have," she replied, her hand finding his with practiced ease, their bond humming with shared contentment. "A new dynasty begins with Teven, neither human nor Australian, but something better than either alone." Outside, the binary suns of Astralis cast double shadows across the crystalline landscape, two distinct shapes that merged at their edges, creating something new where they overlapped, much like the family they had become.